Okay, so this is posted by Sword Person. Posted a couple days ago. Overland Travel Part 3, Camp. Continuing along with my series on the house rule supplement I use for Overland Travel, we come to Part 4 where I'll go over the house rules for making. Again, my design goal here was to create interesting choices for players by limiting what they're able to accomplish. Following a normal day of travel, 3 watches, each character will usually want to sleep 2 watches to avoid incurring penalties. This leaves 1 watch free for players to make choices about what they want their characters to do. For spellcasters who need to regain some of their spells, the choice should usually be pretty easy. Spend the 4 hours it takes praying or studying to regain your spells. For all other characters, they will need to make a choice about what they find the most important. There are essentially 3 options on what to spend time on: watch, foraging, or healing. At least 2 characters need to keep watch throughout the night if a party wants to be able to detect wandering monsters. This is a pretty straightforward decision unless your party doesn't have enough members to accomplish all the other tasks they'd like to get done. So I think of, I guess 3 watches. It's like with my 3-man crew, we do 3-person watches. So I guess that works. But this is kind of assuming you have a lot of people, because if you're doing 2 people on a watch for 3 watches, you're having 6. That's assuming you have 6 people, and then extra if some people are going to be doing other things during that time. So if you have 2 people on watch and then someone else is going to do something else and not watch, then, that's a lot of people. I don't know if they mean that you're going to be using your hirelings to do some of the watching for you. We'll see. Well, let's keep going. Typically in Retro Clones, you roll for all the characters as a group, but the whole point of my system is to create difficult choices for players. So I've changed foraging into an action each player needs to take separately. The main advantage of foraging is actually finding water, not food. Most groups will bring some amount of rations when they travel, but with my house rules, characters each need to drink 3 water skins worth of water every day, making it easy to incur penalties if you don't find a source of water. Unless a party is carrying enough water, they can fail to forage for a day and still have enough. The safe bet is to send 2 or more characters foraging. Carrying water skins essentially gives you insurance against failing to forage. Well, that's great, but I guess the one thing I'm confused about is, are watches part of the day and night? Because you're not typically going foraging at night. That is potentially a disaster waiting to happen. You would forage while you're moving. And I think if you folks who haven't seen, when I took a look at the One Ring last night, right, they have one of the roles that you can take on is essentially that forager, which makes a lot of sense, but I'm not sure what that has to do with camping, because typically you're camping in the evening, so you don't have all that much time. And by the time you're getting to, you've done all your unpacking, whatever you unpack, you've put out your bedrolls, you've eaten your dinner. Unless you're in the land of the 24-hour sun, it's going to be dark. And then you're probably not going to want to send some poor sap or even 2 out there in the dark to try to find water or something else. Let's see. As per standard rules in BX and most retro clones, HP gain from natural healing is very slow. It is indeed. In my house rules, I've opted to include additional healing options through specialists. The first healing specialist is the cook, who can prepare food that heals 1 to 2 hit points per person, but usually 1. Let's see. Elber 711 says, I don't bother with camping watches anymore. I roll dice to see who is up, when, and if something happens. That's not a terrible way to do it. I like to ask for watches because I really just want to give the players the choice of who's doing what, and not feel like if I roll randomly and then pick someone randomly that person wasn't asleep. Like, I don't want that. I've had situations where people will argue with, hey, I shouldn't have been asleep. Wasn't I awake? Or, whatever. And it's like, I want them to have told me, hey, what is your plan? And then I do it. But if everyone's willing to just kind of hand wave it away and, okay, each of us is going to take a watch and whatever, then yeah, that's fine. And sometimes different people in my group, they've tended to want watches at different times for various reasons. So they kind of want that. Oh, I want that first part of the evening, or I want the last part of the night. So I like to let them do it. But it's certainly not a bad way to just abstract it all and say, okay, we split the watches up evenly between everybody, and it's on this person's watch that such and such happens. Okay, so we had the cook. Heals 1 to 2 hit points per person, but usually 1. The main downside to the cook is that they need a fire in order to prepare food, which means the party either needs to carry firewood along, or some other character needs to spend a watch collecting firewood. The second healing specialist is the minstrel. So again, this thing with the spending a watch to collect firewood, you kind of need the fire before you're sending somebody. That's kind of, I think if I do the whole bit where you kind of have to have a fire to get healing and stuff. You have to have a warm hearth of some kind. That's kind of the minimum. You can't just sleep cold and get hit point. So that means you have to have kind of the fire is going before people start taking watches, in which case you've already collected the firewood. So I'm not sure about the spending a watch to collect firewood. But I like, in general, I like where their mind is. I'm just not sure about, I guess maybe I'll have to see the mechanics at the bottom, because the way they've structured this seems odd to me, but I might be missing something. The second healing specialist is the minstrel. Anyone who spends a watch listening to the minstrel's music gains 1 hit point. However, they can't perform any other activities while they're listening. The final healing specialist is the healer. They're probably the best option, healing a single person per day at 1d6 plus 1 hit points, but they're more expensive and therefore rarer using the economic availability rules than the other two. They can't heal multiple people like the cook and the minstrel can. Unlike the other specialists, however, the healer doesn't need to spend a watch performing an activity, which frees them up to help with foraging, keeping watch, etc. So I do like these in the general sense. I like the idea of the cook who can cook stuff, though I think you could also give that to a PC. Maybe you could make that, as I've talked about, and kind of giving tags or cliches or whatever you want to call it, certain things, extras. People, you could say that they can be the cook, or maybe you make it a role, and they can do that. The minstrels, I don't know. Like, it's kind of cool because like the music, the healing power of music. However, and maybe just roll with this, but usually my players, when they're camping out and other parties have been in, are not trying to make a lot of noise. You're trying to go undetected, which means you don't want some guy strumming a lute, singing songs about Sir Robin. You're wanting for essentially quiet. So that seems like I just can't see folks picking up on that. But maybe this person's game is different and runs differently, or again, I could be missing something. But it's kind of cool on the one hand, a little bit cheesy on the other hand, which is fine. But to me, there's just the element of, but who wants to have a minstrel singing at night when you're generally trying to not have things hear you? As you can see, these rules encourage bringing a larger party for travel, as you'll typically want at least 4 non-spellcasting characters along, 2 to keep watch and 2 foragers, as well as any characters needed to perform the tasks for healing or any additional tasks. This helps encourage players to hire retainers or bring along specials or mercenaries when traveling, and to set up a camp outside of any dungeons they explore in the wilderness. However, the more people brought along, the more expensive equipping and funding such an expedition will be. You need to supply your party with rations, water skins, traveling equipment, and the additional men and or mounts to carry it all along. All right. And then they basically he's got a table here. Well, he's got a document and a table. So the watches here, he's calling a watch breaks days and nights into 3 watches. Does that mean there's 3 watches? I kind of feel like maybe watches is not the right word they should use. It seems like maybe there's 6. You're breaking days and nights into 6 units. 3 units during the day, 3 units at night, which is not a bad thing. So I could definitely see doing that. Okay. Now you're making an exploration roll. I'm not sure if they mean that's for getting lost. I'm not sure don't remember them defining what a wilderness exploration roll is. This might be something that need to be covered in one of their other articles. You got gear, you got camp action. So it's interesting. I think they need to just shuffle this around, because I think there's a lot of this. I think this could work very well with sort of the One Ring kind of system of giving folks roles. And in fact, it would be cool to extend the roles in the One Ring and think about, here are the roles while you're traveling, and here are your camping roles. And you can do different things. Maybe they rely on different abilities or skills, or if you're doing something like I've been going down the path of a little bit, is trying to use kits or anything to kind of give folks a little extra. Maybe you could say, if you have a cooking skill, you'd be a great cook and you could do this. Or if you have this skill or this tag in your class or whatever in your background, you're better kind of at this element. Like, you could play around a lot with that. So there's stuff to like here, but I just think using the term watches, it's kind of breaking my brain a little bit, because I think like, why you can't go for firewood while you're doing your watches? That takes too much. And this seems to be a lot of people. And I don't mean as far as the retainers, but I mean, you need 2. I've never played with needing 2 people to keep watch at once. I don't think I can remember a game. Usually it's always you need to have 1 person. I get that 2 is more effective. And if someone had a system where it was like, hey, if you have 1 person on a watch, you're going to roll this. You have 2 people, you're going to roll something else. I could totally see that working, but requiring 2 means that you get to make this work. It seems to require a lot of people in your party. And that's before you get into kind of the healing specialists. I like the cook idea though. That's it. All right. So I did link to that, right? So yeah, folks can check that out. I might need to go back and look at some of the other parts of that series. Get taken up votes.